go for a walk because I'm going to share with you the most important learnings from reading the 119-page opinion on universal injunctions specifically regarding birthright citizenship. But first, our lavender is going absolutely insane. There is the chunkiest set of bumblebees having the time of their life. It's like 20 bumblebees. You gotta envy bumblebees, man. They don't have to give a fuck about any of this. So the first thing you need to know is they did not issue any sense of a ruling on birthright citizenship itself. In fact, when you read between the lines in each of the concurring opinions, all of the justices are highly skeptical of the government's claim. Second, what this ruling is actually going to deliver is very difficult to pin down. The headlines are driven by the fact that it was a 6-3 majority opinion where all of the Republican justices concurred. But I read all of their concurring opinions, with the main opinion written by Coney Barrett, but concurring opinions written by Alito, Thomas, Kavanaugh, and Gorsuch. And after reading all of them together, what I can tell you confidently is that the only actual change here is that 3 universal injunctions blocking the birthright citizenship executive order were all sent back to the lower courts that blocked them. And they were sent back with pretty hazy instructions on what to do next. Essentially, the justices all wrote in different ways that a universal injunction should not be the first line of defense. Instead, they've instructed the lower court justices to review the case and determine if there's a way to use a narrower injunction to protect the plaintiffs. At the same time, they admitted that it might not be possible, specifically when it's a state or multiple states suing the government. In that case, Kavanaugh writes that the universal injunction could then be reviewed by a higher court, like an appeals court or the Supreme Court itself. And at the exact same time, Kavanaugh, who really treated this as more of a procedural process decision than as a big philosophical statement, articulated what we've already since learned, which is that a class action lawsuit, in his opinion, is the appropriate way to deal with these kinds of conflicts. What's really funny here is that some of the most important learning I got from reading this opinion came from looking at the things that Alito complained about in his concurring opinion. There's 2 things I want to point out here very specifically. In Alito's concurring opinion, he complains right here that even though they limit the right to issue universal injunctions, he's upset because they're only limited in cases where the injunctions were broader than necessary to provide complete relief to each plaintiff with standing to sue. In other words, he's pissed the lower judge can still use discretion in determining who is eligible to sue. And the other thing he doesn't like about the majority opinion is that it still leaves room for the lower court judge to assert the rights of a third party. What this means is that a judge could still use their own discretion in determining that somebody who is not a plaintiff to the case is at risk of suffering undue harm, and therefore the injunction still must stand. Now let's come back up to the surface. What this decision actually does is it just puts greater pressure on lower court judges to determine when and how to use injunctions to protect people's rights. Now this is definitely worse because nothing ever gets decided in a day or two, which means if Trump tries to do something illegal, it could potentially take longer to protect people from those damages. But if you don't remember, messy and complicated is actually not something Trump wants to get involved with. He wants easy, quick fixes with big, flashy headline wins. So while yes, this is a terrible decision that absolutely should have been a 9-0 favor in support of nationwide injunctions, it is not a decision that leaves us without options to fight. And right now, I'll take that as a win.